Hi. So, in this video, we will be looking at a few answers to the questions that we analyzed in the previous video. So, those five in depth themes or the core areas that we analyzed, I will be picking up two of them in this video. So, the first question goes like, why did the moderates fail to carry conviction with the nation about their proclaimed ideology and political goals by the end of the 19th century? So this question was asked in 2017 and it was for 10 marks. So the theme over here is, or a sub theme you can say, is moderates. So the question goes like, why did they fail? So why did the moderates fail? Okay, and to carry conviction with the nation about their proclaimed ideology and political goals. So the two themes or the two subparts of the question that you can notice is that number one, the moderates, you have to showcase in your answer that the moderates somewhere did fail in carrying forward their proclaimed ideology and their political goals. So the second theme is the proclaimed ideology and the political goals. So you have to somewhere in the answer speak about what their proclaimed ideology was, what their political goals were, and how did they fail. All right. So in the beginning, I've mentioned that the moderate leaders followed a pacifist approach via constitutional means, hoping that the Britishers would transfer power to India. So their approach was of a moderate kind or of a pacifist kind, and they hoped that the Britishers would transfer power to Indians if they followed this approach. So what was their proclaimed ideology and political goals? Number one, they believed in the three P's, that is prayer, petition, and protest. Then they wanted, other goals like Indianization of government services. They wanted reforms in councils and they wanted more power to the councils. Since they believed in constitutional methods, they wanted passing of legislations like the Indian Councils Act and the other Monumental reforms and other sort of legislations. Then they were holistically focusing on economic reforms. Specifically, you can name over here two leaders, which is R.C. Dutt and Dadabhai Naoroji, and you can name their respective books and their works like Dadabhai Naoroji's Drain Theory and R.C. Dutt's Economic History of India. You can quote these two, and how they were showcasing the exploitation and the transfer of wealth of Indians from the bank of Ganga to the bank of Thames. Okay, then you will be speaking about, however, they failed to carry conviction with the nation by the end of 19th century. The moderates did some good work, however they did they could not sort of, with their approach, we did not see independence as early. So there were certain limitations in the approach of moderates. So what were they? Number one, the moderates as a group of leaders were, the elitist, educated kind of leaders. Their use of language was, the legal jargon. They did not have a mass appeal. They did not also believe in the power of masses. They felt that the Indian masses were not ready for a mass freedom struggle. Then they thought that Britishers would transfer power if they, are heeding to constitutional methods. But ultimately, this was proved wrong. So even the acts that were passed or the policies that were passed were as dead as a doornail. Okay, and moreover, there was a rise of other kind of ideologies and leaderships. For example, the extremists with the mass appeal, like Tilak via his Ganesh Chaturthi and other kind of festivals, he was able to mobilize the masses. Then there were revolutionaries who proved to scare the Britishers, and they have also attacked several Britishers. For example, revolutionaries like Bhagat Singh and several more. Then there was an era of a Gandhian movement where popular methods like Satyagraha, Ahimsa, CDM and non-cooperation were also on the rise. Thus, in the conclusion, you will mention that although moderates used prayers against British, ultimately they laid the foundation of INC freedom movement that paved the way for independence. So yes, there were limitations, but then these were the group of leaders who laid the foundation, and that kind of paved the way for the Indian freedom movement, Indian independence. Okay, so this was one question on moderates. Let us look at the other question on moderates. So the second question on moderates was, to what extent did the role of moderates prepare a base for the wider freedom movement? As you can notice, the conclusion of the above question somewhere became the next year's or the subsequent year's question. So that's how this theme is interlinked. So this was asked again in 2021 for 15 marks. So here you need to give a tone where you are justifying that yes, the moderates did prepare a base for the wider freedom movement. Please note how I'm using words from the question in my answers. For example, over here the question carried the word proclaimed ideology and political goal. So we gave the heading as proclaimed ideology and political goal. Okay. Then fail to carry conviction. Again, we sort of put that here in the beginning of this page. Alright, so that you are kind of answering the question and you're addressing the demand of the question. So coming back to this question, how did the what was the role of the moderates in preparing a base for the wider freedom movement? So to begin with, we give a chronology and we give the important leader's name. So the moderates, they led the freedom movement from 1885 to 1905. The important leadership was Dadabhai Naoroji, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, who was the political guru of Gandhiji. They prepared a wide base for the freedom movement. How? So we will be justifying how they prepared a base for wider freedom movement by giving several points. For example, they evoked political consciousness amongst the early days. Then they used constitutional methods like prayer, petition, and protest to lay a strong foundation for the freedom struggle. And then they provided organizational structure in the form of the INC, the formation of INC, Indian National Congress in 1885. Then their methods were legal methods to bring in reforms like the Indian Councils Act of 1892. And when you have a legislation in place, it is whether the legislation is weak or strong, that is a different question, but the legislation does provide a foundational sort of framework for the subsequent governments to follow. So the moderates were indeed successful in using legal methods, and they were able to their efforts led to the passage of certain acts. Okay, then they were educated and they thought rationally. They spread ideas via press, pamphlets, and they took inspiration from other global freedom movements. For example, the Italy's unification, the Japan's fight against Russia. So they were sort of having a global outlook. Then they spoke voraciously against a very important issue of that time, which is poverty, famine, and they conducted in-depth research on the economic exploitation. So this by far becomes the most important point, because the moderates were the one who unraveled the economic exploitation, and it was documented by leaders like R.C. Dutt in his book Economic History of India, and the drain theory was conceptualized by Dadabhai Naoroji, and it was put in his book Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. So this has to come in your answer. Then they intertwined social reforms along with national movement. So there were leaders again like Dadabhai Naoroji and several Gokhale, etc., who formed social reform movements, or who led social reform movements like the Rehnumai Mazdan Sabha, which was in Mumbai, and the Servants of Indian Society by Gokhale in 1905. So basically, moderates did lay a strong base. This is what you have to conclude with, and then you can also give like a way forward speaking about how moderates were led by other extremists like Lal Bal Pal, that is Tilak, Lalaji, and B.C. Pal, who garnered mass support. Then there were revolutionaries, and then there was a Gandhian phase ahead. So all in all, moderates did sort of bring a strong base, and they paved the way for others to continue against the British until the Indian Independence Act of 1947 and the sovereign constitution making rights to Indians. So this was the sub-theme on moderates. It is covered in 2 answers. Alright. Now we will be moving to the second theme that we analyzed. The second theme that we analyzed, in fact the most important one, was on Mahatma Gandhi. So the questions that I have taken over here are: number 1, bring out the constructive programs of Mahatma Gandhi during the NCM and the CDM, the non-cooperation and the civil disobedience movement. So this was asked in 2021 for 15 marks. So to begin with, I have quoted one of Gandhiji's book, which is Mahatma Gandhi in his book The Story of My Experiments with Truth highlights the constructive program during freedom struggle. Again, please note how we've used the same words that are given in the question and done some very significant value addition. Okay, then we divide the answer into 2 themes or 2 subparts, which is NCM, non-cooperation, and below there will be a subpart on CDM. So the first one, how Gandhiji brought out constructive programs during NCM. We mentioned that he adopted Satyagraha, Ahimsa, non-violence, and not to cooperate with the British anarchy. Then his second significant move was mobilization of the masses. And amongst masses, I have given three subpoints, which is students, women, and professionals. So among students, he mobilized them. He kind of brought in an awakening, and he exposed the true purpose of education. Then with women, we can quote a few prominent women like Sarojini Naidu, Matangika Hazara, Kasturba Gandhi. They fought at the forefront with Gandhiji in public spaces. Then professionals and lawyers and businessmen like Jamnalal Bajaj, Jamshedji Tata, C.R. Das, Motilal Nehru, the prominent lawyers of those time, they contributed in both aspects, the financial aspects as well as their legal knowledge. Then we will be looking at Hindu-Muslim unity that was witnessed during the time of NCM, especially during the Khilafat issue, how there was a united blow against the Britishers. And then the rise of parties like the Khilafat Swaraj's party by Motilal Nehru. Then let us look at the second sub part of the question, which is CDM. So during CDM, Gandhiji joined hands with regional leadership. For example, there are 3 to 4 areas and specific leaders which you can quote. The Dharasna Salt Satyagraha by Sarojini Naidu, the Vayakum Satyagraha by K. Lappan, C. Rajagopalachari's Vedaranyam to Tanjore Salt March, and other princely rulers in Awadh, Bengal, etc. Then during the CDM, he used salt as a symbol. Salt as a symbolic fight of the masses against the British in the Dandi March. Then he showcased individual satyagraha by leaders like Nehru, Vinoba Bhave. Then there were no tax campaigns organized in places like UP, Tamluk, Bengal. Then there was a combined Swadeshi boycott and civil disobedience against the corrupt British policies and the corrupt acts. So thus, in conclusion, we will be mentioning that the powerful constructive programs laid strong foundation of principled politics that unified the masses against the British. So Gandhiji's 7 social sins, or politics without principles, so that element we brought in the conclusion, principled politics. So this was the first answer on Gandhi, how Gandhiji's contribution was in NCM and CDM. This is a specific area. The other questions that we saw on Gandhi were, there was this one question which was asked in 2019 for 15 marks. It says, many voices had strengthened and enriched the nationalist movement during the Gandhian phase. So basically, this is a unique question because we're speaking about the many voices that were with Gandhi or which were present during the Gandhian phase. So over here you're supposed to give sort of a chronological experience about what were the several voices and how did they strengthen the nationalist movement and how Gandhiji was along with these voices, and ultimately this was like the chronology of the nationalist movement that ultimately led to the independence of India. So again, in introduction, I have brought in a book by Bipin Chandra, The Struggle for India's Independence by Bipin Chandra, showcases how Gandhiji's leadership strengthened several voices and enriched the nationalist movement. So we've hit the nail right there that we've spoken about, yes, Gandhiji, his leadership had strengthened other voices too. So with examples, number 1, going in a chronological order, we will be speaking about the Champaran, Ahmedabad and the Kheda Satyagrahas, mention their years and mention the leadership that was present. Okay, then these were the combined leadership with Gandhi at the center to fight against the taxation policies and the exploitative labor policies and amidst drought and famines, whatever was happening during that time. Then we will be mentioning about the Rowlatt Satyagraha, and during Rowlatt Satyagraha, Rabindranath Tagore had given up his knighthood title. Then the third one is about non-cooperation and CDM. Non-cooperation and CDM, we just saw an entire answer in it, and we can speak about the other leaderships like Sarojini Naidu, C. Rajagopalachari, Vinoba Bhave's individual satyagraha, and how this was sort of NCM and CDM ushered in a mass mobilization, the entry of women, peasants, professionals in the freedom struggle. Then we also had the home rule agitation. This was around 1916s and 17s with Tilak and Annie Besant at the forefront. So Gandhiji also strengthened the home rule agitation. Then we will be speaking about the support given by Gandhi to women and other leaders during the Quit India movement, like leaders like Usha Mehta, Kalpana Dutt, Madam Kama. They helped internationalize the freedom struggle. So, thus, these collective voices, strengthened by the support of Gandhiji, gave a final blow to the British. So, in a chronological order, we've mentioned several movements, we've mentioned the leaders, and we've mentioned how there was a combined voice which was strengthened and it enriched the nationalist movement. All right. So, yeah, let us look at the next question. One more question on Gandhi. This will be the last one for the day. So, how different would have been the achievement of Indian independence without Mahatma Gandhi? Discuss. So, this is asked in 2016 for 12 and a half marks. So, alright, I think I've misplaced this question. This is not the question. The question is on Gandhi and Bose. So, just we'll go up and read the question once again. So, yes. Basically, the question asked in 2016 for again 12 and a half marks, question 9 over here. Highlight the differences in the approach of Subhash Chandra Bose and Mahatma Gandhi in the struggle for freedom. Alright, so what were the differences in the approach of these two leaders in the struggle for freedom? That is your question. So, whenever there is a question on differences, you can adopt the model of using a table and you can distinguish between the two leaders. So, that's what I've done in this question. But to begin with, I have mentioned a little bit about Gandhi and Bose. Gandhiji hailed Subhash Chandra Bose as the prince among the patriots, and it was Bose who hailed him as Mahatma. Both leaders were synergistic in the freedom movement. They had certain similarities as well as differences. So, as the question was largely on differences, we will first begin by mentioning the differences. So, the table approach, the first point that I've mentioned is about ends and mean debate. So, Gandhiji was a person of means. He wanted purity of means, like non-violent means. Vis-a-vis Bose was focusing on ends rather than means. He was for use of military force to garner freedom. Vis-a-vis Gandhi had withdrawn the non-cooperation movement after the Chauri Chaura incident. The second point is Gandhiji focused on a Ram Rajya, a stateless society with decentralization in authority. But Bose was focused on a centralization of a power and he wanted an authoritarian state. The third point is about the approach of Gandhi towards women. Gandhiji considered women having a traditional home-based role, although they did participate in the mass freedom movements and there was, the domestic sphere also entered the political sphere, that was witnessed. But Bose's approach towards women was more of like he wanted women in the battlefield. So he had a Rani Lakshmibai regiment in the Indian army. The next point is about education. Gandhiji believed in an education which was learning by doing. Then he wanted handicrafts, vocational and vernacular education. But Bose was someone who believed in modern education, technology, science, and then he took inspiration from countries like Japan and Germany. When Gandhi wanted to speak about production, he wanted self-sufficiency, village-based industry. But Bose was someone who wanted a complete industrial revival and mass production in which was competent with the global standards. Then the other point is the last point, that Gandhi did not believe in taking advantage of the British weakness during the world wars, but Bose saw it as an opportunity and he had a militant streak to use the Indian National Army for Indian independence. Thus, in conclusion, despite above differences, both the leaders revered each other, and that's what we mentioned in the introduction as well, and their collaborative efforts revitalized the masses and it ultimately secured the freedom for India. So with this we have covered two sub-themes, which is on Gandhiji and the other one on moderates. In the upcoming sessions we can look at other answers as well. Thank you so much. Goodbye.